because the doctors don't know anything about nutrition and the role that that plays, when they see a woman with an abnormal pap smear, a lot of times they automatically want to give her a biopsy, which is very invasive and can cause other issues further in life. And, they'll want to give her a biopsy to make sure she doesn't have cervical cancer, when really that woman might need to just go put folate in her diet, okay, and come back in 6 months and do it again. Because just because you have abnormal cells doesn't mean that you have cancer. Folate is necessary for the division of DNA, okay, in the cells. When cells replicate and the DNA has to be replicated, folate is essential for that. If your folate is low, the cells will replicate in a mutated way. So all the OBGYN knows, all the GYN knows is that the cells are abnormal. So it could be cancer, but it might not be. It might be a nutritional deficiency, right? And so I remember also being on the train in New York and studying my biochemistry, and there was a pharmacist sitting next to me who thought that I was in pharmacy school because he saw the biochemistry I was doing. And so pharmacists, medical students, and nutrition students all study biochemistry, right? But we study it from a different angle. So now that I'm in, this graduate program, medical cannabis science, which is interesting because the program, you don't have to have a science background to be in the program. Although I feel, and they really try their best to teach it in a way that's accessible to people who don't have a science background. And the thing I say about that is I don't know what it's like for the people who don't have a science background, because I do. I think that without a science background it might be a little tough. I also think that, without a science background, you may not be able to dig as deep, right? Because the years of what I've learned and been studying. So for me, I didn't just get the degrees and say, oh, I have a degree in exercise science and nutrition science. I don't need to study anything else. I don't need to read nothing else. I don't need to learn anything else. I never did that. This whole time, I've been constantly learning, studying, reading things from the right people, listening to research, okay, constantly. And every practitioner should do that. A lot of them don't. A lot of them, they just get whatever license or, degree and they're done with that, right? But it's really an ongoing thing. But also you have to have critical thinking skills, because there are things that I realized that I learned because first of all, graduate school is about doing research. Like, especially in masters, I would say a lot of it is digging up research and compiling research, right? And so this is the reason why when I was in my first graduate program and I was in my early 20s, and I knew very smart people who were vegans, and to me it didn't make sense, but I didn't express an opinion because some people that I really respected, they were very smart people, they were vegans. And so I thought, that doesn't make sense to me, but maybe they know something I don't know. But because I take my health very seriously, not for my clients, but also for myself, right? For myself. And I remember in my family and my loved ones, I remember when I was in college and I was studying the things I was studying in exercise science and nutrition science, because they're both equally important. Because you can eat good all day, but if you don't do shit with your body and you don't have any strength, that affects how you age and your longevity as well, right? So they're both important. I don't like when people say one is more important than the other. No, they're both important. It's like when people try to say spiritual is more important than physical because we're not our bodies. No, they're both important. To me, the physical is just as important as the spiritual. I don't place one above the other, period, right? So the thing is that, I remember thinking when I was in college that the things that I was learning then, right? I remember thinking this is information that I can use to help myself and my family for the rest of my life. And I remember thinking that. I never regretted getting the degree I got. And mind you, I have an obsession at looking at degrees because they're very specific. Okay, they're very specific. Somebody with a degree in physical education is not the same thing as exercise and sports science. Somebody with a degree in kinesiology is not the same thing as exercise and sports science with a concentration in strength and conditioning. Somebody with a degree in nutrition, that's not the same thing as understanding sports nutrition. Okay? So there are intricacies within it all, and specialties, and the types of classes that was in your curriculum to prepare you for what you did. It makes a difference, right? So they're not all the same. But also, At a master's graduate level, you're looking up research. So I remember back then looking up research about veganism, listening to people who, talked about vegans live longer and making all these claims. And the Layla Africas and the Sabis, who I think both of those dudes are complete frauds, and I do not respect either one of them at all. Okay, I have a video I did a few years ago talking about how Sabi was a fraud, and I do not call him doctor because he's not he's not a Bush doctor, he's not a Western, he ain't, no, okay? That's a whole nother conversation, and I've done a video about that. I may need to do it again. But if anybody follows my work and sees the things that I talk about, you'll understand why, okay? You understand why. Because a lot of people, especially so-called black people, throw on a dashiki and call themselves something Africa, and all of a sudden all the Afrocentric black people in America start following that shit. But if you ever been around an African, they're not eating like that. And they're living long, a lot of them, long and strong. And they're eating every part of the damn animal. They drink milk too. They eat pork too, all that, okay? So, getting back to it, right? Being in that graduate program and having access to the best research and actually digging up the research and then using my critical thinking skills, right? I never came to the conclusion that being a vegan was a good thing to do. I don't care what health problem you have. I don't care. Not for cancer, not for detoxing, because actually there's a lot of foods that are important for our body to naturally detox, and all of those things are in animal foods, okay? A lot of those things are in animal foods, all right? So now I don't care what the issue is. I would never recommend that. Now, as a nutritionist and as somebody who is looking at, the most beneficial ways, okay, the most efficient ways to get certain nutrients, the most efficient ways to train your body in a certain way that's going to translate into physical performance and not just a look. Because some people could work out for a look, but when it comes time to run, when it comes time to jump, when it comes time to have agility, you don't have it. You know what I'm saying? When it comes time to lift up something heavy, you can't do it. So who needs to look if you don't have any function, right? So you want to do, as a strength and conditioning coach, I am trained to look at the most efficient exercises to work your glutes, to work your hamstrings, to work. That's what we do. And there's a science behind that as well, periodization methods and all of that, right? So I'm saying that to say that, this whole vegan thing, it's like over the years, as I've stayed true to the science and true to researching and true to working with clients, okay, I've known so many people that have wrecked their health on this plant-based diet for years. And some people may claim that they feel great, and then they get to year 10 or 15, if they even make it that long, and they have all these problems, right? Now, what I do is rooted in traditional things, traditional methods. I don't believe in technology food. I don't believe in using technology to alter foods. Okay, I told you I have a background in biotechnology as well. And so all of these things are coming together in the cannabis space, right? Because the same philosophy that I have with everything else, like when it comes to food, I like to look at traditional foods, traditional ways of preparing foods, healthy, long-living populations. What did they eat? How did they eat it? How did they prepare those things? Okay, like you have Ethiopians eating raw beef. A lot of people might think, oh, you can't eat raw beef. Well, there's cultures who do. They do in Ethiopia. You know what I'm saying? Why you have to soak your beans and your grains. Why you have to, fermentation, all of those things. All right, all of those things. So when it comes to, and so I don't believe in like trying to put vitamin D in orange juice, for example. You were vegan for 6 straight years and it wrecked your gut. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, but I know so many people. There's so many people who I've had to revive, in my practice, had to revive back into good health because they spent all these years being a vegan. And that's why I do not respect the people who are putting that propaganda out there. Because to the people who choose to become a vegan, they're usually doing it because they feel like, oh, I want to be healthy. So if you spend years of your life doing what you think is healthy, and it's not, that's a lot of damage that could be done that could have been prevented. It's putting you, you know what I'm saying? Like, I never wanted to have that blood on my hands. I never wanted to be responsible for making somebody worse when they were coming to me to get better, right? And again, a lot of people don't have critical thinking skills, and they don't have, like, I'm not going to say you always have to have a science background. You don't. If you really stay rooted in real traditional practices and not new pseudo made up shit, like real traditional practices, then you don't need the science background. Okay? So the thing is, you know, the science, for me, the science background helps to just confirm these traditional things, right? So, with cannabis, you know, okay, so people put vitamin D in orange juice, right? And that's no good, okay? Because vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin, and vitamin D is high in foods that are high in fat, like liver, cod liver oil, butter, eggs, you know, raw dairy, cheeses. All those things are high in fat, but they're also high in vitamin A. Vitamin A and vitamin D go together. For every unit of vitamin D, you need a unit of vitamin A. You also need the right unit of fats because it's fat soluble. So if you're taking artificial vitamin D and putting it in fortified orange juice, putting it in orange juice, well, orange juice is a bunch of sugar, there's no fat in it. It's a fake vitamin D, there's no vitamin A. That's not good. The way body metabolizes that, you're messing with nature. And nature is far, no matter how much Western science we can study nature all we want, we will never understand the great mystery. We will never understand it. So I don't believe in messing with the balances and altering the balances that nature put into place. I really don't. Meaning, you know, like you can get creatine. Creatine helps with muscle contractions, muscle strength, and muscle power. Creatine naturally occurs in meat and muscle in the flesh of animals, right? So again, like Hill's like, eating flesh is good for your flesh, okay? However, when you have athletes who take creatine as a supplement and they're taking high doses of creatine, way higher than they could ever get from eating food, that becomes a problem. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I'm talking about. You know, when people start using technology in food and they're doing it in cannabis, where it's like, oh, we'll take these cannabis isolates and we'll take these terpene isolates and we'll, you know, and these terpene isolates comes from who knows where, may not even be cannabis terpenes or whatever. And we're going to put it in this product. Then we're going to use this kind of technology to put THC or CBD, which is fat soluble, into a water-based product when it's not water-based. You know what I'm saying? I don't believe in that. Okay. Now, in this program, you know, I'm always researching, but I've been researching a lot and really digging deep a lot, and far beyond what they're teaching us. Okay. Sometimes that can be frustrating because I'm like, I feel like I'm teaching myself a lot. You know what I'm saying? But I guess sometimes too, school is what you make of it, especially on a graduate level. So you're going to have to put in the work and also dig deeper, right? So terpenes, you know, like some of you may or may have not heard of terpenes. And terpenes are these molecules in plants that give it scent, okay? When things smell orangey or citrusy, or when you smell rosemary and garlic, ginger, you know, those are all terpenes that give it the scent. But terpenes are also medicinal. However, I did not really realize, because a lot of times when you take just biochemistry, and even when I took nutritional biochemistry like almost 20 years ago now, like it was so overwhelming. I feel like school was harder back then too. And I was taking several classes and it was like so overwhelming that I wasn't getting, it wasn't until years later that I really started to get a lot of it. And this is the thing about people who get degrees in certain things. Like you can get a degree in nutrition and you took those biochemistry classes, but you don't really, it's not really in your brain like that. Like so in nutritional biochemistry, you learn like, you know, there's different chemical forms of vitamin A. When people hear the term vitamin A, that's a generic term for the public. Scientifically, there's a lot of different chemical forms of vitamin A, of vitamin D, of vitamin E, like a variety of chemical forms. Some of them are active, some of them are inactive. Some of them are artificial and toxic. Some of them are, you know, there's different points in the metabolism. You also learn where they're stored in the body. You learn what toxicities do, what deficiencies do. And I remember when I learned that, and I was learning that, and you're learning it on a, you know, with actual biochemical equations, the enzymes that are involved. And to me, I remember thinking, what? Like, it was like Greek. It was so hard. And I thought I would never understand it. And over the years, I've continued to just study. And there's a lot of things that I do understand that I can recite, right? and it's given me the years to think critically. So now here I am in this medical cannabis science program, and I'm thinking, okay, terpenes